Good evening, everybody. I'm Suzanne Shirley. I am a senior Ruby ambassador with Plexus Worldwide. We are doing the very final chapter of the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth by John Maxwell. This is the law of contribution. I thought it was a very powerful chapter myself because, well, first of all, just the title of it makes you think, well, this is just redundancy. This is him restating everything that he has stated the whole entire book, which is serving others and adding value to others so that you can build your own self and grow your own self. But this is from a different slant. He approaches this chapter, and I wrote the question at the very top of the page right here. And the question is this: what is your reason behind growing yourself? I thought that was the theme of the chapter. What is your reason behind growing yourself? Is it because you want to amass wealth and you want to achieve your own personal goals? You're going to grow yourself for that reason? Or are you going to grow yourself so that you can add value and help others? And I think that that is a profound question to ask yourself. I know that it was very profound for me to ask myself that question. It made me think, and I will be honest with you, the very, very first part of my thinking before I started reading, I listened to the chapter again, by the way, on Audible. I listened to it this morning and then I read it. And I think when I was listening to the chapter, I started asking myself these questions and I started thinking, well, I'm growing myself so that I can achieve my goals. I'm growing myself. I'm investing myself so that I can develop my full potential so that I can accomplish my life's mission and my goals. And I just really thought that I was pretty selfish. And then I read the chapter, I read the chapter, and something happens when you put your hands on the paper and you put your eyes on the text and you're not just listening. And I found myself in various parts of this chapter where I realized I do have the right priorities. Yes, I am doing a lot of things for myself, but at the same time, there is no real success in life if you cannot help other people. If you don't have the capacity to give to others and to give freely with nothing in return that you're expecting. And I have learned how to do that as a teacher. I knew that the hours and hours that I would pour into my students and the school district and the meetings and the committees that I would be on, that there was no pay that I was going to get for that. There was nothing extra that was going to come back to me. And I became very used to working without any kind of expectations. So I don't feel as bad, but I will tell you, there are some parts of the chapter that I evaluated some of my motives. And I had to just be honest with myself. So I ask you to do the same thing. And at the very end, there are some questions that I want you to really think about and ponder and ask yourself. I wrote out the answers to those questions because I was curious as to what my answers would be. And I'm going to challenge you to do the same thing. So let's get started. The law of contribution. Growing yourself is going to enable you to help others grow. And if you're not doing something with your life, it just doesn't even matter how long it is. And that was the quote that was below the title of the chapter. If you're not doing something with your life, it doesn't matter how long it is. It's meaningless in the first place if you're not doing something to help others. So John Maxwell admits at the beginning of the chapter that in the beginning, he just was intentional about growing, and his motivation for personal growth was selfish in nature. He wanted to grow so that he could be successful, period. He said that his personal growth also opened doors for others. His progress did. It led to just not the achievement of success, but to the work of significance. In other words, the work of meaning, of purpose. He said he was also able to give, and his personal growth gave him credibility. It made him believe that he could start to develop other people. And he also ended up finding his life's greatest joy and reward in pursuing intentional personal growth. You cannot give what you do not have. So how in the world can you grow others if you do not grow yourself? And if you do not have a reservoir of growth to choose from so that you can pour into other people's lives? But if you've worked to learn or earn something, then you have the ability to pass that on to other people. He mentions Benjamin Franklin, who said, "I would rather have it said he lived usefully than he died rich." That's pretty interesting. You know, I will say this. I read the book, or I listened to the book, You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. She mentions throughout the book, and then entirely devotes a chapter to this topic, the thoughts about money and amassing wealth and gaining riches. There's a lot of people, in fact, all of you, I'm sure, have some beliefs about wealth and have some beliefs about your own gaining financial riches or gaining financial wealth for yourself. You've probably got some attitudes that have been ingrained in you for decades from either parents or outside influences from church. And I certainly do. I certainly do. And I will tell you this, we just have to have the right attitude about becoming wealthy. If that is, you know, the unit of success that we will be able to, in other words, like a unit of success, or should I say the vehicle, the item that we are going to be able to use to bless others and to have time to bless others is going to be the dollar. And if we cannot earn that dollar, if we cannot earn wealth and we cannot gain riches, how are we going to be able to give to others? How are we going to be able to accomplish our life's mission? Not all of us can go to a nunnery and become Mother Teresa and have nothing. And in order to give, you know, Mother Teresa had the whole entire Catholic Church behind her. So she was poor in her own right, but she had the Catholic Church behind her, which is one of the wealthiest establishments, if not the most wealthiest establishment on the planet for all time. So my point is that money is a vehicle, is a resource, is a thing that we have to use in order to be able to do and accomplish what we want to do. So we have to get our thoughts right about money. Now, I'm not here to talk to you all night about money, but Benjamin Franklin mentions it. And so we have to have a really right attitude about what we think about money and how we are going to use it. We have to respect it. Otherwise, we will not be able to, might be able to accumulate it, but we will not be able to hold on to it. And in order to hold on to it, I'm not talking about miserly, storing it away. I'm talking about being able to maintain a level of wealth so that we can bless others. So Franklin invented this thing called the Franklin stove. He could have patented the stove and made this huge income off of it, but instead he decided to share the invention with the entire world. He was really a big giver. Think about how big of a gift that could be to the world. He could have sat by and just made money off of that invention, but he gave that invention to the world. He gave the secrets of that to the world. Dr. John C. Van Horn of the Library Company of Philadelphia said about Benjamin Franklin, said, Franklin's philanthropy was what I call a collective nature. His sense of benevolence was aiding his fellow human beings and doing good to society. In fact, in one sense, Franklin's philanthropy, his sense of benevolence, was his religion. Doing good to mankind was, in his understanding, divine. I remember reading about Benjamin Franklin at some point, it's not in the book here, that he was sort of a deist, meaning that God is there, but he's not involved. But at least it talks about, this man talks about how Benjamin Franklin took on his lifestyle of a benevolent lifestyle. It was his nature. It was his religion, being benevolent to others. Think about having a life like that. If that's the reason that you lived was to give of yourself. The number one reason you live is to give of yourself. That is a pretty lofty, goal to have. And I have to admit, that is not my number one goal, is to live so that I can benefit others. I want to make that as one of my goals. But when I did the assignment at the end of the chapter, that was not my number one goal, is to live so that I could be a benefit to others. It's one of them, but it's not the top. Every day, Franklin asked himself in the morning, what good shall I do today? And in the evening, what good have I done today? You know, it's a really good thing that Benjamin Franklin was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence and one of the brains behind it. Obviously, Thomas Jefferson was the writer, and he was one of the biggest brains behind the Declaration of Independence. But Benjamin Franklin's philosophy of freedom and liberty for this country was profound. And it's a really great thing that a man such as himself, who lived a life of pure benevolence, that was his mission, that was his purpose in life, that he was one of the greatest brains behind the Constitution, or not the Declaration of Independence. I mean, we were blessed as a nation to have him there at such a time. David Ray, the Young Presidents Organization, says that most CEOs are afraid of dying. Less afraid of dying than they are of not making a contribution to the world. Think about that. That's pretty interesting. David Ray of the Young Presidents Organization said that most CEOs are less afraid of dying than they are of making a contribution to their world. So what does that tell you? The most successful people on the planet are more concerned about making a difference in the world than dying. That's pretty incredible. John talks about his own models, which were his parents, and how his parents modeled a life of servant leadership to others, that all they did was pour themselves out in a variety of different things and ways. And finally, he talks about how we should desire to be a river and not a reservoir. So what's the difference between a river and a reservoir? This is so important. I want to read this paragraph. How do you increase your chances of being able to help others and make a significant contribution in your lifetime? Think of yourself as a river instead of a reservoir. Most people who do make personal growth part of their lives do it to add value to themselves. They are like reservoirs that continually take in water, but only to fill themselves up. In contrast, what does a river do? It flows. It just keeps flowing. So whenever the water it receives, it gives it away at the same time. That's the way that we should be as we learn and grow. That requires an abundance mindset. You have to have an abundance mindset, a belief that we will keep receiving. If you don't have an abundance mindset, you're going to sit around and think that there's going to be an end to your learning. There's going to be an end to your reception. Somebody's going to stop giving to you. You're not going to always receive. You're always not going to get something. So if you have an abundance mindset, you're going to assume that you're always going to receive something amazing, and therefore you're always going to be giving out. As long as you're dedicated to personal growth, you will never experience scarcity, and you will always have much to give. My questions that I want to ask you are the same ones that John Maxwell asks you to ask yourself. Who encourages you to believe your best? Who is it that encourages you to become? Who encourages you to become your best version of you? Who mentors you and offers a baseline of wisdom? Who mentors you to aspire to be a better person? Who challenges you to think? Who cheers on your dreams? Who cares enough to rebuke you? Who is merciful when you have failed? Who shares the load in pressurized moments without being asked? That's a biggie. That's a biggie. Who brings fun and laughter to your life? Who gives you perspective when you become dispirited? Who inspires you to seek faithfully after God? And who loves you unconditionally? You need to answer those questions. Who is it that encourages you to become your best? We should also turn them around so that we can think about taking on a similar role with other people. Turn those questions around in a similar role that we should be taking on with other people. Whom do you mentor? Do you share the load in pressurized moments without being asked to do so? Are you there when someone needs you? Do you come running? Do you volunteer your time? Are you dedicated to someone without any expectation of a return? And you need to ask that. And I'm talking about more than just your loved ones and your children. Think about some other folks in your life, people that you expect nothing in return. They're not going to be able to give you anything. Think about that. Ask yourself those questions. And if you cannot say that you are doing those things, or at least that you want to do those things, then there's going to be some need to change. We need to grow in that area. Because I can answer that question and say, absolutely, I would do that. Now, sometimes, am I going to always have the best attitude about it? No. When a kid came walking in my door and said, Miss Shirley, I don't understand Spanish. Can you help me? I mean, Lord have mercy. What do you want me to do? Go back over the whole entire book and teach you the whole language? I mean, I need some help here. I mean, you're requiring me to sit here and tutor you for 15 hours. If you ask me, I need, that to me was a huge burden when a kid came in asking me that. And usually that kid was not going to show up again. That was just like a flash in a pan. Their parent just wanted them to show up and get some tutoring and to say that they had shown up and got their tutoring so that they could make their parent happy, because they weren't really interested in really learning Spanish. They were only trying to make their mom happy. So I felt like I was burdening myself to teach a kid who didn't want to learn in the first place. And it became very, very burdensome to me. It was constant that would happen. It was on the hourly basis. My students didn't really want to hear what I had to say. A few of them did. A lot of them felt like they were just sitting in a class. They might have liked me and they had a lot of respect for me, and they wished that I would get off the subject so they didn't have to listen to whatever teaching that I was going to tell them that day about the Spanish. But I tell you one thing is, it just was constant burden. And what is your attitude? What is your attitude in certain servant leadership? When somebody comes to you and you know that you're going to be giving and getting nothing in return, what is your attitude about that? You need to ask yourself. Check yourself at the door. You've got to really do some inventory here. Making the right contribution choices. Okay. Giving of your time, expertise, and resources without expecting anything in return is an unselfish act and makes the world a better place to live. We need more givers, period. When you focus more on the wants and the needs of others, more of your own wants and needs are going to be met. And I always believe that. I always did believe that, even as a teacher, when I got a very small paycheck and I knew that I was not going to get paid anymore for sitting for 2 hours after school training a kid that didn't really want to sit there and listen to what I had to say. I knew that my investment over the long term was going to grow me as a person, and it was going to somehow at some point pay off. Well, it's paying off now, because the skills that I developed over those many years I'm using every single day in my business today with people that I talk to on the phone or with my team. You can become a more generous and giving person even if you already exhibit those qualities. However, to do that, you must be a growing and a developing person. And you must be intentional in your efforts to add value to others. You've got to literally be intentional about it. You've got to make a plan to add value to other people. There are 7 ways to cultivate an attitude of contribution. 7 ways. The first way is to be grateful. People who are not grateful cannot ever be givers. They rarely think about anybody else but themselves. Their days consist of looking for others to help them, give to them, serve them. And whenever others do not fulfill those expectations, they wonder why. Their selfishness keeps them from sowing, and their ingratitude makes them wonder why they do not reap a harvest. We all know people like that, don't we? Those are people that we cannot stand to be around. Those are people that are so selfish and so focused on themselves. They do not have 1 ounce of gratitude. They're always looking what can be gained. What can somebody else do for them? Not what can they do for somebody else. And it became obvious, according to John Maxwell, who said that many people had helped and were still were helping him along the way. Every author who wrote a book that John read, every leader who took the time to teach him, every individual who worked as a volunteer in his church. So his point is that nobody who develops success does so alone. In other words, he just gave credit to every person that helped him along the way. He didn't become a success because of himself. He became a success because other people poured their lives into him. How do I show my gratitude? Says John, by daily pouring into others and passing on to them the things that will allow them to run far and achieve beyond what he has done himself. As you receive yourself, you will do the same. The second thing is to put people first. So be grateful, have an attitude of gratitude. Number 2, put other people first. What you give to help others builds them up enough that they're able to help and give to others as well. Okay? I'll say it again. What you give to others builds them up enough that they are able to give to others as well. It's a cycle that just continues on along after you're dead and gone. It is. It's a cycle that continues long after you're dead and gone. Think about all the greatest people in history who were intentional about helping other people and giving to others. Benjamin Franklin is one of them. Think about Abraham Lincoln. Yes, these are famous historical individuals in American history, but no one is ever going to forget Abraham Lincoln. All he did was help people. His whole mission in life was to help people. He gave of himself to the point where he actually gave his life for his mission and his cause. Think about Martin Luther King. How many people did he end up helping? And he gave his life for his mission and cause as well. So this is the ultimate help, right? And their legacy lives on forever. It lives on forever. The line between motivating people and manipulating them is so very thin that it's easy to cross. So you don't want to get into that particular situation. Once people are satisfied that your motives are true, that your motives are right, you will end up helping to put them ahead of your own selfish interests. And they will then become willing to become partners with you on the journey. And they will stick to you like sisters and brothers. That's this team. That's what we have on this team. That's what they desire to be, not merely passive followers. People don't want to just be passively following somebody. They want to feel like they're a part of some massive mission and some big altruistic vision and purpose. And they want to be connected to somebody who has an altruistic purpose in life as well, that's doing things for the right reasons, not for their own benefit. Okay? People don't want to feel like they're expendable cogs in some sort of machine that you're building. They want to feel like they're a part of your life's mission. The measure of success is not the number of people who serve you, but the number of people that you serve. That's the measure of your success. How many people are you serving? Okay, that's number 2. Number 3, don't let stuff own you. You can't just collect a bunch of stuff and expect that stuff is going to make you happy, right? People are becoming enslaved to their desire to acquire a bunch of junk, right? No one should ever become a slave to stuff. No one should make acquiring more than just for the sake of having more his life's work. Just for the sake of more, Okay, I'm going to have more and more and more. That's my whole life's work. I mean, what a terrible mission to have in life. In the Bible, there's a man whose stuff controlled his thinking and his life. And so John Ortberg writes about this guy in one of the Gospels. And he basically sums up the guy's life. Think about this. If this was your life's mission and your purpose, what an experiment in futility, right? He devoted his life to the wrong things. If you were to make a list of his priorities, it would look something like this. What matters most to him is this. Number 1, harvest a big old crop. Number 2, build bigger barns. Number 3, achieve financial security. Number 4, eat. Number 5, drink. Number 6, be merry. And number 7, remember not to die. What a terrible reason to live, just to get a bunch of stuff and have more and become a reservoir of things that you're gaining and not ever taking some of that and giving it away. Okay, that would be just an absolute exercise in futility. So what about Andrew Carnegie? He was a multimillionaire and he was an industrialist in the 1880s. Okay, and he wrote this book called The Gospel of Wealth. The life of a wealthy person should have 2 periods, according to Andrew Carnegie. A time of acquiring wealth and a time of redistributing it. Now, I'm not talking about socialism. I'm not talking about the redistribution of wealth as in socialistic governmental practices. I'm talking about a way of life. I'm talking about there should be a time in a person's life where they get all their stuff and they gain their skills and they get their wealth, and then they need to start figuring out ways to give it to people and help other people. That's what I'm talking about. Number 4, don't let people own you. So you're not going to let stuff own you. So again, don't let anybody own you. Don't let a person own you either. And when people start to figure out that they've got some control over you, then you're stuck. And it happens to the best of us, right? It happens to a 29-year-old child who's not a child anymore, who lives in his parents' basement, and the mom keeps paying all the bills and the dad keeps paying all the bills, and then he tries to move out on his own, and the mom and the dad says, well, why are you doing this after all that we've done for you? You know, and they've controlled everything that the kid has done, and he feels like he owes them. And they can't just let him fly and let him go off and accomplish his dreams. That's what happens when people start to own you. If they start to do so much for you that all you're doing is receiving and you're not giving, it's again the same concept of taking all this in and doing it and getting a big reservoir but not giving back. And when you do that, you're too much of a taker and not a giver, then they're going to own you. They're going to say, hey, where's my ownership in this? So that's what happened to John and his wife when they were kind of not in a good place and they financially, and they were building their success story, and they didn't have really great jobs yet, and they were just still learning. And this really wealthy couple took them out to dinner every Friday night to this fancy schmancy restaurant. And then finally, when John got this great job at a really amazing church outside of that town, he had to move away. That guy basically said, hey, what's in this for me? Well, after all I have done for you, you're going to just leave. So he felt beholden to him. And he decided that day that he would never, ever let somebody control him again, that he was going to always give more than he received. And yes, he always receives. He's never going to stop receiving help from people, but he just wanted to make the choice to where he was always going to give more than receive. Okay? He didn't want to give away the control of his life. It's so hard to give yourself away when somebody else owns you. When somebody else is controlling everything that you're doing, then you can't give very easily to anyone. You got to value people with no strings attached. And the only way to do that is to own your own self. Don't let other people own you, and give more than what you receive. Number 5, define success as sowing and not reaping. The amazing Robert Louis Stevenson, American author, said, I consider the success of my day based on the seeds that I sow, not on the harvest that I reap. And I want you to really take notice to this particular little one right here, number 5, because this will relate to the 90-day challenge right now that we are actually experiencing. A lot of you are in the 90-day challenge. And every single day you are sowing seeds into people's lives. You are reaching out. You are calling people. You are texting people. You are reaching out to your warm market, your cold market. You're trying to talk to people about plexus. You're not really seeing the fruits of your labor yet. And you just keep sowing those seeds, right? So I want to say it again. Robert Louis Stevenson said, I consider the success of my day based on the seeds I sow, not the harvest I reap. I want you to think about that and hear that. Most people sow very little and they expect so much as a result. They expect too much and they've given so little. Their focus is on payday. Where is my piece of the pie? They give very little, but they have these huge expectations of a return. Okay, now I love this quote. This guy named Nabi Saleh, who owns Gloria Jean's Coffee, very successful coffee company. After sowing, here we go, listen, after sowing, there's a period of time when it looks like nothing is happening. How do you relate to that, 90-day challengers? After a period of time when you're sowing, it looks like nothing's happening. All the growth is below the surface. There's all this roots that's taking place. It's growing. It's trying to find roots in there. It's trying to figure out how to get some stability before it pops up through the top soil. They become so impatient and people give up because they don't understand the concept that all that sowing is building deep roots and the growth is below the surface. People get impatient and then they quit and they give up. Bob Buford, who wrote a book called Halftime, writes about what his Zen master told him. This Zen master means like Zen Buddhism, I guess, said that your life is like a teacup flowing over. He took a teacup and he started pouring tea into it until the tea overflowed and just started running out, like just never stopped running out all the way down past the table onto the little mat they were sitting on, and the tea kept on coming his way. And he was looking at this as an analogy, and he said, your life is like a teacup flowing over. There is no room for anything new. You need to pour out, not take more in. There's no more room to take more in. You're filled up to the brim. So what happens is when you're filled up to the brim, the only thing that can happen is that you need to start pouring it out. That's like a teacup analogy. So you sow continually and you sow abundantly. And when you do so, you can be sure that in due season, there will be a harvest, 90-day challengers. There will be a harvest. Successful people know this and they focus on the sowing, not on the reaping, okay? You focus on your activity, not on the results. How often do we hear that in network marketing? You focus on what you're doing every single day. Are you reaching out to this number? Are you making so many phone calls? Are you texting so many people? Are you doing your affirmations? Are you reading your personal growth and development? If you know that you're doing that stuff every day, then you can rest assured that the results will come. Don't look at the results, you look at the activity. Same thing for the person that's trying to lose weight. Are you maintaining your certain calories? Are you drinking your water? Are you getting in your activity? Are you this, that, or the other? And if you're doing that, you concentrate on those define your success, not what the scale says. The scale will eventually catch up to all those activities that you're putting in. And that's what he's trying to get across here. Okay? Successful people know this and they focus on the sowing, not on the reaping, knowing that the reaping will eventually come. The process is automatic. It's going to happen, okay? You can trust in it. If you live a life with intention of making a difference in other people's lives, your life will be full and not empty. Your life will be full, not empty. Number 6, Focus on self-development, not self-fulfillment. There's a difference. Self-development, not self-fulfillment. Mentor consultant Fred Smith, what did he say? Self-fulfillment thinks of how something serves me. Self-development thinks of how something helps me so that I can serve others. There's a difference between self-fulfillment and self-development. With self-fulfillment, feeling good is the product. With self-development, feeling good is a byproduct. It's on the side. It's going to happen as a result of whatever you're doing. It's going to happen no matter what, because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be helping other people, and it's a byproduct. Feeling great is a byproduct of helping other people. Chasing self-fulfillment is like a bit like chasing happiness. It's elusive. You're never going to grab it. It's an emotion that cannot be sustained. It's here today, gone tomorrow. It relies too much on circumstances. Oh my, I can't stand that. In contrast, you can develop yourself regardless of how you feel. So if you feel like crapola someday, you can go out there and develop yourself reading something that's going to make you a better person so that you can now, in spite of your circumstances, go out and help someone else. And in return, even though your circumstances literally suck, you can feel amazing. You can feel amazing as a byproduct. Okay. Number 7, last one. Keep growing to keep giving. Whenever people stop actively learning and growing, the clock has started ticking down to a time when they'll no longer have anything left to give. Do you know people like that? They are the most selfish people. They have terrible attitudes. So, I have met some people that are in their late 80s that are like that. They stayed children in their maturity level, and all they're about is woe is me. What can you do for me? I have met a few like that, and there's not a lot of people that are elderly that are like that, but that's possible. Anybody can reach whatever age and still be at a lower level of maturity because they've never learned to give freely of themselves. All they're doing is taking in. And those people are so miserable to be around. I can't stand that. So the clock is ticking down to a time when they will no longer have anything left to give. If you want to keep giving, you've got to keep growing. So what happens to you when you stop growing? Well, you start to plateau. And then once you do that, you start to decline. You're going to go downhill. You're going to lose your innovative spirit. You're going to begin to think about being efficient instead of breaking new ground. You're just going to try to keep the status quo. You're going to cut costs instead of investing in your growth. Find a different level to live on. Maybe get a smaller apartment. You can't afford the one you're living in. Let's cut costs. Let's move down a couple of notches in life. Oh, I can't stand that. I'm sorry. It's just not, unless you want to live in a smaller place, literally, there's no other reason to go down in life. Vision becomes limited. Instead of playing to win, you start playing to lose. Playing to not lose. Okay, think about that. Instead of playing to win, you start playing to not lose. Well, I hope I don't lose. I hope I don't lose. Well, that's a terrible state of mind. You're going to lose your passion. Less skill leads to less enthusiasm, and eventually you're going to be discontent. You're not going to have as many skills as you have, because when you start to decline, you're going to lose some of the skills that you earned and learned when you were productive, right? You're going to start looking behind yourself, realizing that, hey, your best days are over. They were in the past. Now you're going to recall the good old glory days because you don't have anything good coming, right? What kind of contribution can you make if you get to a life that's like that? That's terrible, a place to live like that. Finally, the story of Jim Rohn, one of the greatest philosophers of our modern time, motivational speakers, truth tellers. He was incredible. You can listen to him on YouTube. He's all over YouTube. He has a lifetime of recordings of speaking truth and motivation to people. His name is Jim Rohn. One of Jim Rohn's main messages was, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Your income is directly related to your philosophy, not the economy. And for things to change, you must change. You must change. By age 31, Jim Rohn was a millionaire by doing all the things that he did. He basically went to college for 1 year and said, okay, I've got enough education. He believed in self-education. One of his famous quotes that I have as one of my affirmations is, formal education will make you a living. Self-education will make you a fortune. That's why he only spent 1 year in college. He went out and started making his way in the world. And he educated himself. During a career developing people that lasted more than 4 decades, Jim Rohn wrote more than 24 books, spoke at more than 6,000 events, and developed around 5 million people. Okay, he observed this. Listen to this one. The greatest gift that you can give someone is your own personal development, developing yourself. You develop you, and you're going to be able to give the greatest gift to someone else. He says, I used to say, if you will take care of me, I'll take care of you. But now, he says, I say this, I will take care of me for you if you will take care of you for me. He believes in self-development. When you develop yourself, you have everything to give to someone else. If all you do is take care of others without developing yourself, you have nothing to give. How was Rohn able to help so many people and to help so many who became well-known teachers and mentors in their own right, like Tony Robbins, for example, and so many others? Les Brown, Brian Tracy was one of his people that he mentored. He did so because he continually developed himself. Okay, he understood that growing yourself enables you to grow others. He lived by the law of contribution. That is the law of contribution. That by growing yourself, your mission is to grow others. So here's the application, and here's the questions that I want to ask you. And our team will be discussing this when we get off. So I want you to be thinking about it. If you don't feel comfortable talking on the discussion, I'm certainly not going to make you talk. This is not about making people feel uncomfortable. I want to also take a moment when we get off of here to have everyone introduce each other and maybe get to know a little bit, just a tiny bit before we discuss. But I do want to get to the discussion. There's some people that are in the 90-day challenge, but we don't all know each other. The questions that I want to ask you to apply are this. What is your underlying desire in your life? Is it self-fulfillment or is it self-development? You've got to ask that to yourself. Are your efforts designed to make you feel good or to make you your best? Is your goal to be successful or to be significant? Or achieve significance, meaning, purpose? Are you trying to achieve so that you can feel happy? Circumstances that are elusive? Or are you trying to put yourself in a place where you can help others? Big questions to ask yourself, and I mean it. Those are some toughies. It's okay to be honest. It's okay to be honest about those because that's where you're going to grow. Number 2, make sure that no person owns you. Make a list. This is really important. Make a list of the key people in your life. Now think about each relationship and determine if you are mostly the giver or are you mostly the taker, or is the relationship even? I will say this, when I've looked back over a couple of the relationships I've had in the past, I can definitely define that I've been more of the giver and the person has been more of a taker. It was so uneven, and those relationships did not last. They didn't last. They were doomed. And it was like the print came jumping off at me off the page when I read the unevenness there that was listed on the page, and I replied that to some of the relationships I've had. And I mean with like friends of mine. And I say girlfriends, like mean female friends that I've had in my life. If we're not equal in our relationship to one another, then the relationship does not survive. It crumbles. And then the number third one is the final application exercise in the book is to put people first in your life. Write down, here's what I did. Write down your top 3 to 7 goals and dreams. Now write down the names of the most important people in your life. This one's profound, guys. Be honest with yourself. Which comes first? The people or your goals and dreams? Wow. So I'm saying right now that hit home to me when I did that. Make the decision to put others ahead of your own agenda. Put your family ahead of your own agenda. Put the development of people at the workplace ahead of your own advancement. Serve others instead of yourself. Commit to it. Then invite others in your life to hold you accountable to it. And remember, sometimes the seeds that you sow take a long time to grow, but you always see a harvest. Don't forget, seeds take a long time to grow sometimes, but you will see a harvest. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey of the 15 invaluable laws of growth. It's been a pleasure to teach everybody in YouTube land, whether you're on my team or not. And peace and joy and love and success to all of you. And best wishes and prayers to you, from me to you.